Hello, friends. Tonight's story isn't about heroes, kings, or glory. It's about silence, about stone and rot, about what happens when the world above forgets that you're still breathing below. No grand battles, no sweeping victories. Just the steady, slow erosion of a life behind iron bars. So before you drift off, take a moment. Dim the lights. Let your room grow still. Maybe even light a candle, if that helps set the mood. Because we're not going far tonight, just down. Down into the bowels of medieval life. To a place where light doesn't reach. No trial, no sentence, no end. This is not the dungeon of fantasy or legend. This was real, and it was worse. This is what life was really like in the worst medieval prison. Now, take a breath and imagine yourself underground. The first thing you notice is the air. It doesn't move. It presses against your face, thick with the smell of damp straw, old blood, and something sourer. Something that might once have been food, or a man, or both. The walls around you are stone, but they don't feel solid. They sweat. Moisture seeps from every crack, mixing with the mildew that coats the corners like old moss. The floor is uneven and cold. Your feet, bare, blistered, swollen, rest on a patch of straw that's more mold than plant. It's never dry, not fully. And you are not alone. 7 others lie in this cell with you. You don't know their names. You may never learn them. One of them, an older man with a badly broken leg, hasn't moved in days. You think he's dead, but no one checks. There's nowhere else to put him anyway. Another man wheezes through every breath. A sickness, something wet in his lungs, shakes him with spasms. Each cough stirs a ripple of panic among the rest. No one wants to lie near him, but there's no room to move. You shift, slowly. Your wrists are bound with rusted iron, chains that bite into the skin. The shackles are too tight, and every movement rubs fresh sores into flesh. Your ankles, raw and red, rest against the stone. Sometimes, at night, you feel something tugging at them. Rats. You stopped trying to kick them away days ago. They don't scare easily anymore, and they know you're too weak to matter. Food comes irregularly, if at all. A guard might pass once or twice a day, if he remembers. He never speaks. He just tosses something through the bars. A piece of bread, blackened with mold. A thin stew that smells faintly of turnips and urine. Once, there was a bone in it. Someone nearly lost a tooth fighting for it. There is no fire here, no torchlight, only the faint glow that leaks through a slit in the stone above. High and narrow, too far to reach, too small to escape through. When the light fades, you sleep. When it returns, you wake. It's the only way to measure time. But you've stopped counting days. Time here is not measured by sun or shadow. It's measured by the drip of water from the ceiling, the shuffle of bodies, the scraping of rats, the sudden random scream from down the corridor that snaps your spine with fear. Or worse, the silence that follows. No one tells you why you're here. You remember being dragged in, mud in your mouth, a blow to the head. But nothing since. No trial, no explanation. And worst of all, no promise of release. You have not been sentenced. You've simply been forgotten. At night, the cell gets colder. The stone holds no warmth. It steals it from your skin. You curl tight, trying to preserve it, but the coal seeps in anyway. Your breath is damp, heavy. It doesn't rise, just pools around you. Someone groans in the dark, not far. A low, hollow sound. Pain, maybe. Maybe something else. You don't ask. No one speaks much anymore. Talking uses energy. It reminds you you're still human. That makes it harder. Most just lie still, eyes open, watching the dark. Sometimes someone cries, quietly at first, then louder, but never for long. You don't cry. Not now. Your throat is too dry. Your ribs ache when you breathe too deep. There's no bucket, no latrine. The corner by the wall is soaked, a slick pool of waste and old blood. It smells sharp. It burns your nose. You try not to move that way, but space is tight. If someone shifts, you shift too. One man mutters in his sleep. Latin maybe, or a prayer. It's hard to tell. It could be nonsense. Most things are now. You remember the sky, vaguely, the feel of wind. It feels far away, like a dream someone else told you. You remember bread, real bread, crusted, warm, with butter. It makes your stomach hurt just thinking of it. Sometimes your hands twitch. Reflex, like they're reaching for something. A door handle, a spoon, a person. But there's nothing here to touch. Just stone, straw, flesh. The guards walk past sometimes. You hear their boots. You don't bother begging. They don't stop. You used to hope someone would come. A priest, a friend, anyone. Now, you just want them to leave you alone. You stopped asking why you're here. There's no answer. Maybe you stole something. Maybe you angered the wrong lord. Or maybe someone just wanted your spots at the market. It doesn't matter. You are here, and no one is coming. The chains bite deeper. They've rubbed through skin now, into something softer. Your wrists are swollen. You can't move them much, but the weight is always there. A reminder, you are not free, not even to shift. When it rains, water leaks down the walls. A thin, steady drip. It soaks your back, or your legs. Depends how you're lying. Sometimes the drip is the only sound. It marks time, slowly, painfully. One day, maybe it was a day, a boy was thrown in. Couldn't be more than 15. Thin, filthy, eyes wide with fear. No one helped him. There's nothing to offer here. He cried for a while. Then he stopped. He doesn't speak anymore. A few times the cell door opened again. They took someone out. No warning, no reason. You never saw them again. Maybe they were freed. Maybe they were hanged. You don't ask. You don't want to know. The walls have marks, scratches, tally lines, names, words in half a dozen tongues. Someone carved a face once. Just eyes and a mouth. No nose. You stare at it sometimes. It feels like it's watching back. There are bugs here, lice, fleas. You scratch until you bleed. Doesn't matter. The itch never stops. The smell changes with time, grows sharper, more layered. Rot, urine, fear. Your body gets used to it, sort of. But it lingers in your mouth, your clothes, your skin. You wonder if you smell like this now. You hope no one ever has to find out. There's a rhythm now. Wake, wait, eat, maybe. Sleep, listen, scratch, hurt, repeat. Nothing new. Nothing breaks the pattern. Only the screams. They don't come often. But when they do, they stay with you. Long after the voice goes silent, some scream words, names. Others just sound raw, broken. Once, you heard laughter. It was worse than the screams. The worst thing here isn't pain. It's not hunger, not even fear. It's the waiting. You don't know if today is the day you're taken. You don't know if anyone remembers you exist. You're not sentenced. You're not convicted. You're just here, buried but breathing. You try to think. Remember your old life. But it slips, like dust. The names fade first, then faces, then the shape of the sky. This place doesn't kill you quickly. It unravels you, thread by thread, until you're just a body in a corner, or a mark on the wall, or a scream in the dark. And no one comes. Not all who were imprisoned wore rags. Some wore silk, and some wore crowns. But the walls of a cell, even a royal one, do not care what you once were. Let's begin with Hugh Despenser, the younger. A man who rose too far and fell too hard. In the early 1300s, England was a kingdom in unrest. Edward II was king, a man not loved by his barons, weak in battle, strong in favour, and his greatest favourite was Hugh, tall, clever, ambitious. Hugh Despenser was not content with land or titles. He wanted power, real power. He latched onto Edward like a shadow, whispered in his ear, acted in his name. He grew rich, obscenely rich, seized lands, punished enemies, ruled through the king. And people hated him for it. Barons grumbled, lords plotted. Even Edward's wife, Queen Isabella, watched with cold eyes. By 1326, Hugh Despenser was one of the most hated men in England. And then the tide turned. Queen Isabella left for France. She returned with an army and her lover, a man named Roger Mortimer. They marched on London. Edward fled, and Hugh fled with him. They were caught near Wales. What happened next, Hugh had not imagined. Not for a man like him. He was stripped, not just of title and wealth, but of food, dignity, protection. Dragged to a cell, starved, bound, kept in darkness. The same chains that once held thieves, now closed around royal wrists. He wasn't dead yet, but the tower was waiting. The cell they placed Hugh in was no grand chamber, no tapestries, no fire, no servants, just stone and chains. He was kept alive, barely, but not well. He was denied sleep, denied food, and denied the dignity of silence. Guards shouted at him, mocked him. Sometimes they didn't speak at all, just watched. He had once sat at the king's side. Now he lay on straw. Not clean straw, just enough to separate skin from stone. They dragged him through streets, from holding cell to prison, from prison to tower. Crowds spat at him, screamed, and still he wore chains. By the time he reached the Tower of London, he was barely a man. His clothes hung loose, his eyes sunk deep. He was too weak to stand. But the tower was not his end. Not yet. They moved him again, west, to Hereford, for a trial, if you could call it that. There was no judge, no defense, no mercy, only a crowd, and a sentence already written. And so Hugh Despenser, once the most powerful man in England, was dragged from his cell to meet a death that would be remembered for centuries. They tied him to a cart, not a carriage, not a horse, a cart, wooden, mud-slick, pulled through crowded streets. He was bound at the wrists and ankles, head exposed, hair matted. People lined the roads, some threw filth, others just watched. His crimes had been many: greed, corruption, treason. But what they hated most was his arrogance. They wanted to see him broken. And by then, he was. When he reached the square at Hereford, there was no delay, no priest, no final word, just ropes, and the Queen, watching from above. Queen Isabella, the same woman whose marriage Hugh had helped destroy. The same queen whose son would become Edward III. Now she watched as her enemy was made an example. This was not justice. It was revenge. And it was not quiet. But before the end came, Hugh waited, chained, alone, in a cell near the scaffold. He knew what would happen. He heard the crowd gathering. He smelled the smoke, the iron, and he waited. He had once ruled through fear. Now he faced it, minute by minute, alone. Hugh Despenser died that day, but he wasn't the first noble to find himself in chains, and he wasn't the last. The Tower of London, cold, looming, infamous, held many. Some for days, others for years. Some walked out, most did not. Take Thomas Becket, a priest, a statesman, a thorn in the side of the king. Once a friend to Henry II, he became an enemy, refused to yield church power, spoke too loudly, too often, and in 1170 he was dead. Not in a prison cell, but still a prisoner of sorts, trapped by politics, hunted by blades. And the tower, it watched silently, even then. Then there were the princes, two boys, Edward V and his brother Richard. They arrived at the tower in 1483. They never left. Their uncle, Richard III, took the crown, and the boys disappeared. No trial, no grave, no answers, just a stone room, a window barred. And then, nothing. Their story haunts the tower to this day, a place of honor, of defense, of secrets, but also a cage. And even royalty found no key. Noble blood didn't mean freedom. It just meant better clothes. Sometimes. But Coldstone feels the same, no matter your title. Anne Boleyn knew this. Queen of England, wife of Henry VIII, loved, crowned, then accused. They told her she was unfaithful, disloyal, dangerous. She was taken to the tower. Her apartments were cleaner, brighter, but they were still a prison. She walked in silence, waited in silence, and in May of 1536, she was executed. Calm, graceful, but still, forgotten by the man who once adored her. Her body lies beneath the tower's chapel. So does her memory. The tower became a mirror, reflecting power and punishment. Sir Walter Raleigh learned that too. Explorer, poet, favorite of Elizabeth I, then enemy of James I. He spent over a decade in the tower, not chained, but confined. He wrote, grew old, grew bitter, and in 1618 they took him out, not to free him, but to kill him. A noble death, a quiet one, but behind it, years of waiting, years of silence. For nobles, prison was more than stone. It was humiliation. They were used to being obeyed, federal, bowed to, not forgotten. The tower stripped that away. It didn't matter if you were royal or chosen. Once the door closed, the silence began. Some had servants, some had books, but they all had fear. Because power fades fast in the dark, and kings change their minds. One whisper, one rumor, that's all it took. You could go from council chamber to cell in an hour, like Thomas More, scholar, statesman, Lord Chancellor. He refused to accept Henry VIII's divorce. He was sent to the tower, given time, then warnings. He held firm, and in 1535 he walked to the scaffold, calm, head held high, but still a prisoner, still alone, Titles didn't matter. Not here. We often imagine nobles in prison as better off. More space, softer beds, maybe a scribe, or a meal not entirely spoiled. Sometimes that was true. But comfort doesn't quiet fear, and fear grows louder in silence. The noble prisoner had one torment the poor rarely faced: memory. They remembered life before the chains, the warmth of a fire, the scent of beeswax on polished wood, pages of parchment spread on a writing desk, conversations, soft chairs, fresh clothes, choices, all of it, gone, taken in a heartbeat, replaced with waiting. Many were imprisoned not for crimes, but for ideas, faith, loyalty, the wrong words in the wrong ear. Some went quietly, others clung to power, even in the dark. Lady Jane Grey was one of those. Queen for 9 days, a teenager, crowned through politics she barely understood. When the true heir, Mary Tudor, claimed the throne, Jane was locked in the Tower. She was young, bright, gentle, but politics have no heart, and the Tower had no pity. For months, she lived in a shadow of hope. Maybe she'd be spared, exiled, forgotten. But rebellion stirred, plots whispered, and so the axe came for her. She died at 16, calm, composed, reading from a prayer book. She had no army, no rebellion, only a name, and that was enough to lose her life. The Tower's walls saw it all. A girl in a cell, a queen in name, a prisoner in truth. There were thousands like her, names lost to time. Some noble, some not, all brought down to the same level by stone. There is something quietly terrifying about being locked away with your own name. Not just your body confined, but your legacy. For noble prisoners, reputation meant survival. It defined you, protected you. But once behind walls, that name could rot. A noble who fell from favor rarely rose again. And even when they did, they returned changed. Consider James I of Scotland, captured by the English as a child, held for 18 years. He lived in castles, not cells, studied books, wrote poetry, learned languages, but he was still a prisoner. He watched kings rise and fall, watched his homeland rule without him. He was remembered, but not missed. When he returned to Scotland, older and colder, he ruled harshly. He had learned what power really was and how fast it could vanish. Then there was Mary, Queen of Scots, a queen twice over, born to rule. She was beautiful, charismatic, tragic, and she spent 19 years in custody. Not in chains, but always watched, always feared. She embroidered, read, walked in gardens, but she was still in a cage. And when the crown felt threatened, the cage closed tighter. Eventually, even that quiet captivity wasn't enough. She was executed in 1587, wearing red, the color of martyrdom. The Tower didn't hold her, but her life was the same story: power, confinement, silence. For noble prisoners, there was no safety in status, only delay. The axe didn't care for titles, and the cell never asked who you were. By the end of the Middle Ages, the prison had become more than a place. It was a tool, a warning, a stage. And nobles, once so sure of their place, often found themselves alone in the spotlight. There were no crowds cheering for them anymore, no scribes to write their glory, just the cold echo of footsteps, the groan of an iron door, and then the wait. For some it was short, for others endless. The Tower of London, Warwick Castle, the Bastille, they held more than bodies. They held shame. They held regret. A noble imprisoned had nowhere to fall but inward. No farm to return to, no trade to pick up. Once your title was taken, there was nothing left. And yet, many clung to their past. They signed letters as Lord, as Duke, as Queen. Even when the world had moved on, even when no one would read them, even when their name was the last thing they owned. The tower stands today, its stones silent, but they remember, not just the screams or the chains, but the whispers of silk, the fall of crowns, the quiet sob of someone who thought they were untouchable, until the key turned, and history shut the door. Centuries passed. The voices fell silent. The footsteps stopped. But the stone remained. And underneath some of the oldest castles in Europe, the earth still held its secrets. It wasn't until the 19th and 20th centuries that people began to look deeper, literally. Not just at the visible prisons, but beneath them. Behind bricked-up walls, under floorboards, in shafts no one remembered. And what they found wasn't just stone. It was history, buried alive. At Warwick Castle in England, workers clearing an old wine cellar noticed a draft, a breeze, from nowhere. They followed it to a false wall, and behind it, a hidden chamber, small, cramped, the size of a closet. Inside they found shackles still bolted to the wall, a ring of iron, a short chain. The floor was worn smooth in a perfect circle, from pacing, years of it. One set of scratches marked the wall, over and over. The same mark, not words, just lines. Hundreds of them. A tally. Someone had counted their days, or tried to. No record of who it was, no name, just the walls and the silence. At Château de Loche in France, the story was similar. An old castle with layers of history, built and rebuilt over centuries. Beneath the towering walls, archaeologists uncovered a bricked-up cell, hidden away, forgotten. Inside they found bones, human bones, not neatly arranged, not in coffins, scattered across the floor, some small, some large, a mix of ages. Along the walls, faint scratches caught the light, symbols carved into stone, Latin prayers, names perhaps, or pleas. Nearby a copper cross rested, tarnished and bent, a silent testament to faith in the darkest hours. One of the bones was unusual, a human tooth filed to a sharp point, a strange, grim artifact. Why would someone do this? Was it a tool, a weapon, a symbol? No one knows, but it speaks of desperation, of survival. The cell was not just a prison. It was a place to be broken, to be unmade, and almost forgotten by history itself. In the silent depths beneath these ancient walls, archaeologists discovered more than just bones and iron. They found whispers carved into stone. One cell held scratches so deep and numerous that the entire wall seemed a canvas of suffering. Tally marks, carved one by one. Lines crossing the stone, counting days, weeks, months, years. A prisoner's slow attempt to measure the unmeasurable. Time without light. Time without hope. Nearby, Latin prayers etched carefully, sometimes barely visible to the naked eye. Words of comfort or desperate pleas to gods long forgotten. Sometimes the carvings showed simple images, a cross, a heart, a face, perhaps a memory of freedom or loved ones. Among these marks, a chain was still bolted to the ceiling. It swung faintly in the breeze from hidden vents below, a silent reminder of captivity. The cells seemed to breathe with the memory of those who suffered there. Rats had left their marks too. Bones gnawed clean in dark corners. Discarded animal bones scattered among the human remains. There was even a small stash of these bones carefully piled, as if someone had gathered them, perhaps as a grim token. The copper cross nearby glinted faintly. The metal was worn, but the symbol remained. A faint hope in a place where hope rarely survived. These discoveries spoke of more than punishment. They told of desperation, of faith, and of the slow unraveling of the human spirit. In the damp, dark corners of these hidden cells, archaeologists found more than physical traces. They found stories. Silent stories told by scratch marks, forgotten objects, and the very air thick with time. One particularly small cell revealed an eerie detail. A single human tooth, filed sharp, almost like a small dagger. Why? Perhaps a tool for escape, or a weapon for defense, or maybe a grim token, a reminder of control in a place where control was stolen. Nearby, faint traces of what might have been a prayer mat or a piece of cloth were found. Fragments, decayed beyond recognition. The air here is thick, still, as if the memories cling to the stones themselves. Beyond these cells, a narrow shaft led down to an even darker chamber. No light reached this place. No one ever came here. It was a space designed for disappearance. Chains still hang from the ceiling. A single bolt, twisted and worn. Evidence of someone tethered in darkness, left to wait, forgotten. This is a prison within a prison. A place where time stops and hope dies quietly. Yet, despite the silence, the place speaks. Through stone, through iron, through the echoes of those long gone. The discoveries beneath these ancient walls reveal a darker side of imprisonment, one not often told. Behind the stories of knights and kings lies the truth of forgotten prisoners, men and women left to rot in silence. At Warwick, the cellar's floor bore impressions, deep, uneven, like someone had paced endlessly, or fallen again and again. Nearby, remnants of food lay half buried in dirt. Bones of small animals, rats perhaps. Discarded scraps of bread, blackened and mouldy. They spoke of hunger, of struggle, of the slow erosion of the will to live. In one corner, the faint outline of a cross was scratched into the stone. The hand that made it was trembling. Maybe it was the last act of faith, or a desperate plea for mercy. These marks were not just signs of captivity. They were the heartbeat of someone's slow unraveling. And while history often remembers the rulers, beneath the dungeons lie the forgotten. Those who suffered without name, without trial, without hope. The deeper archaeologists dug, the more they uncovered shadows of forgotten lives. A small pile of animal bones in one cell seemed carefully gathered. Perhaps a secret meal or a ritual. Nearby, a copper cross, simple, unadorned, rested against the cold stone. It was a fragile thing, holding the weight of hope in a place where hope was scarce. The walls told other stories too. Faint scratches formed symbols, some barely visible, others deeply carved. They spoke of prayers whispered in darkness, of names scratched into stone as if to say, I was here. Chains bolted into ceiling beams hung still. One still moved slightly, swaying with the faintest breeze. It was a reminder that this place was once alive with suffering and despair. Not long ago, someone had been tethered here, alone, waiting, imagining freedom beyond the stone. And yet, these tokens survived. Whispers of human resilience, a history almost lost. Beneath the grand halls and towering walls of medieval castles lie spaces untouched by time's mercy. Dark chambers forgotten by history, sealed away behind bricked-up walls or hidden doors. The kind of places no one thought to revisit. Archaeologists entering these silent rooms feel the weight of centuries. Every stone, every crack holds a story. In one such cell, not far beneath Warwick Castle, they found evidence of long-endured suffering. The floor was worn uneven from years of pacing, from desperate footsteps tracing the same small path again and again. Nearby, the wall was deeply scored with countless tally marks, marks that likely counted days, weeks, months, even years. A prisoner long ago, marking the slow crawl of time in captivity. No one knows their name. No record survives. Only these silent scratches. On the floor, remnants of decayed straw lay scattered, damp and dark. The prisoner's bed. Nearby, broken bones of small animals, probably rats, scavenging what little could be found, were scattered, revealing the constant presence of vermin. The air itself seemed heavy here, thick with centuries of dust and sorrow. In a corner, a small copper cross rested on the floor. The metal was tarnished, bent slightly as if dropped or cast aside. This simple symbol of faith had somehow survived, a fragile beacon of hope amid the despair. Perhaps it was held tightly in a trembling hand, a quiet prayer whispered in the dark. Perhaps it was left behind, forgotten or discarded. Whatever the story, the cross stands as a testament to the endurance of belief, even in the harshest conditions. Near the ceiling, a chain was still bolted firmly into the stone. It hung heavy and silent, swaying faintly in the cold draft, a grim reminder of the physical bonds that once held a person captive. Not just a prisoner of stone, but of iron. The cell seemed to breathe memories, not just of suffering, but of quiet moments of humanity. Moments when a prisoner might have touched the cross, traced the tally marks, counted their days, and prayed for release. These finds offer a glimpse, a fragile thread connecting us to those long gone. They remind us that beneath the grandeur of medieval castles lay hidden worlds of silence, pain, and endurance. As the archaeologists ventured deeper into these forgotten spaces, the atmosphere grew heavier. The cold seeped from the stone, pressing softly into the skin, wrapping around them like a slow, damp cloak. Each discovery revealed layers of human experience, moments caught between hope and despair, survival and surrender. One particularly haunting find was a tiny chamber, barely large enough for a single person to stand. The walls here were scored with innumerable marks, tally lines, each painstakingly carved, worn smooth by time and touch. A prisoner had counted the passing days here, in silence. They had no sunlight to mark the hours, no candle to chase away the endless black. Only these tally marks etched one by one a record of endurance. And yet, time was not their only companion. Fragments of human bones were scattered across the floor, bleached and broken. Among them, an extraordinary object, a single human tooth, filed sharp to a point. Its purpose remains a mystery. Was it a weapon fashioned in desperation? A tool, perhaps, to pry open a door, or defend against the ever-present rats? Or was it a symbol, a talisman, a fragment of identity shaped into something new. Nearby, archaeologists found the remnants of animal bones, a small, carefully gathered pile, possibly left as an offering or as a grim meal in the darkness. These bones whispered of hunger, not just physical, but spiritual. The prisoner or prisoners who endured this place had clung to any semblance of control. A carved prayer scratched in Latin, barely visible, adorned one wall. Words of faith, perhaps, whispered in moments of utter solitude. Faith in a God who seemed distant, yet was the last refuge in a place so desolate. The faint scent of decayed wood and earth lingered in the air, though centuries had passed. It was as if the stones themselves had absorbed the essence of suffering and quiet resilience. And through it all, the copper cross lay nearby, its presence fragile but steadfast, a tiny, gleaming symbol of hope amidst the darkness. The cell was more than a prison. It was a crucible, where the human spirit was tested in its rawest form. The final discoveries beneath these forgotten cells only deepened the sense of quiet despair and endurance. One chamber held a series of deep scratches, arranged not randomly, but in patterns. Perhaps attempts at communication, messages left for no one. Names or dates, carved over and over, fading into the stone. In a corner, a faint outline suggested where a prisoner may have rested their head. The stone there was smoother, worn by repeated touch. The remains of worn leather straps, once part of shackles, lay corroded beside rusted iron bolts, still fixed in the walls. Nearby, remnants of old clothing, frayed and delicate, were caught in crevices, long since faded to dust. What struck archaeologists most was the evidence of time passing slowly here, painfully. The prisoner's world was measured not in hours or days, but in months and years, marked by scratched lines. The cells spoke not just of confinement, but of forgotten lives slipping quietly into shadow. The copper cross, still resting in the corner, symbolized an anchor of hope. Though battered and bent, it endured, a testament that even in the darkest places, fragments of light remain. The silent echoes beneath these castles remind us that history holds more than kings and battles. It holds the quiet suffering of those whose names never made the pages, whose stories are written in stone, and who waited, endlessly, behind the walls, in the dark. Imagine yourself just one floor above the damp, dark cells. You step lightly across polished stone floors. The air here smells of burning candles and rich spices. A warm fire crackles in the hearth, casting flickering light on tapestries heavy with gold thread. Soft laughter drifts through the corridors. A feast is underway. The tables groan under roasted pheasant, fresh bread, and bowls of sweet wine. Nobles dressed in silk and velvet lift delicate goblets. They talk of politics, poetry, and the latest fashions. The music of lutes and flutes fills the air. It is a world of light, warmth, and plenty. But just below your feet, the story is very different. Stone walls sweat with cold moisture. Chains rattle softly. Rats scurry through dark corners. And men and women suffer, forgotten. The contrast is stark. Above, the noble's world is one of comfort and luxury. Below, it is misery and decay. You can hear the faint echo of footsteps on marble, while chains scrape against stone. Imagine that sound, the soft clink of jewels, mixed with the dull clank of iron. It is a story of two worlds, living side by side, separated by just a floor. Above, the nobles' feet tread softly on plush carpets. Their voices rise and fall like music, discussing alliances, marriages, and lands. They sip from delicate glasses filled with wine imported from faraway lands. The taste of sweet berries and oak lingers on their tongues. The scent of rosewater perfumes the air, mixing with burning incense. Laughter rings out, clear and bright, spilling from room to room. Outside, well-tended gardens bloom. Fountains sparkle in the sunlight, their waters singing as they fall. The gentle rustle of silk mingles with birdsong. It is a world of order, of beauty, of power. But just below, the scent is thick with rot and despair. Where polished silver shines, here rust and grime cling to iron. Where warmth envelops the nobles, cold bites through every stone. You can almost feel the chill rising, climbing up through cracks in the floorboards. The rich feast above, roasted pheasant, fresh bread, spiced wine, is but a distant dream for those beneath. They live on scraps, thrown carelessly. Mouldy bread, thin gruel, sometimes nothing at all. Their bodies grow weak, their spirits thinner still. The palace above thrives on excess, while below lives fade in silence. In the grand halls above, candles flicker softly, their light dancing on gilded mirrors and polished wooden panels. Servants move quietly, attending to the needs of nobles dressed in rich velvets and silks. Their hands are manicured, their fingers adorned with rings set with gleaming jewels. Outside the windows, the gardens are alive with color, vibrant blooms of roses, lilies, and jasmine. The air is warm and fragrant, carrying the hum of bees and the soft buzz of distant music. But just below the surface of this beauty, the shadows deepen. In the damp, dark cells beneath, the air is thick with the scent of mold and decay. Stone walls drip with moisture, cold and unforgiving. The floors are covered with straw, rotted and soiled. Rats scurry endlessly, their small claws scratching the stone. The prisoners lie on cold slabs or broken straw, their skin pale, their eyes sunken. Chains bite into their flesh. They listen to the distant sounds of joy and music, sounds they can never join. Each laugh above is a reminder of their isolation. Each clink of silverware, a silent echo of what they've lost. This was not a place for justice. It was a place for forgetting. Imagine now the soundscape above and below. Upstairs, the music flows gently. A harp, a lute, soft voices singing ballads. Down below, the silence is heavy, broken only by the distant drip of water. The soft rustle of silk and laughter contrasts sharply with the scrape of iron chains. Above, the scent of roasting meats, fresh herbs, and spiced wine fills the air. Below, the fetid odor of sweat, damp straw, and decay hangs thick and suffocating. While the nobles enjoy silk tapestries and feather beds, the prisoners lie on cold stone or hardened straw. Their clothes, threadbare rags, soaking with moisture and grime. They tremble from cold and hunger. Their bodies weaken, wasting away quietly. No warmth to chase the chill. No comfort to soothe aching bones. And still, above, the feast continues. The nobles' voices rise and fall like the tides, their joy a sharp counterpoint to the prisoners' despair. Imagine the gulf between these worlds, a mere floor apart, one filled with light and life, the other with darkness and fading breath. Above, The nobles recline on cushions stuffed with down. They savor every bite of roasted game and fresh fruit. The clink of fine china and silverware punctuates their conversations. Perfumed air surrounds them, a mixture of lavender, rose, and sandalwood. They wear jewelry that catches candlelight, sparkling like distant stars. Their hands gesture gracefully, telling stories or sealing deals. Outside, servants weave in and out, bringing more food and drink. The sound of their footsteps is soft, measured. They move with practiced ease. Below, in the cold prison, the story is quite different. The prisoners' bones press sharply against rough stone. They shiver in thin, torn clothes. Their hands, dirty and scarred, reach for a piece of bread hard as rock. Rats dart past, indifferent to human suffering. Occasionally, a guard's boot thuds on the floor above, loud, jarring. No one answers the prisoners' muffled pleas. No one remembers their names. They fade like shadows in the corner. The warmth and music above are distant memories. Memories they clutch desperately, like the last thread of hope. Above, the nobles' laughter rings clear and bright. They toast to alliances and victories, to fortunes made and lost. Their voices echo through vast chambers, rich with gilded mirrors and polished marble. The air is warm, alive with the flicker of countless candles. Servants glide silently, bearing trays heavy with sweetmeats and spiced wine. The music swells, a gentle harp, the soft plucking of a lute. Outside, gardens bloom under a golden sun. The scent of jasmine and rosemary drifts on the breeze. But just below, the prisoners lie cold and still. They listen to these distant sounds, hearts aching with memories. Each note a reminder of the world they once knew. The warmth is gone, replaced by damp chill. The feast above is a cruel echo, a reminder that life continues without them. Their hands shake, their breaths grow shallow, and still, above, the music plays on. As night falls, the palace changes. Candles flicker softly, casting shadows that dance on the walls. The nobles retire to chambers filled with plush beds and silken sheets. Their world is quiet now, but still full of life. Down below, the prison grows colder. The stone walls seem to close in. Darkness deepens, swallowing the faintest glimmers of hope. The prisoners curl together for warmth, bodies pressing against each other like fragile shields. Chains clink softly in the stillness. Rats stir in the corners. Silence is punctuated only by distant sobs or whispered prayers. The cold bites deeper in the dark. There is no fire here, no soft bed, no comfort, just stone, just shadows, and the endless wait. As the night deepens above, the palace settles into a hushed calm. The golden light from chandeliers softens into a warm glow. Velvet curtains are drawn, muffling the sounds of the outside world. The nobles retreat to their private chambers, where the scent of lavender and beeswax fills the air. Featherbeds await them, thick, soft, and inviting. A stark contrast to the cold stone below. Their beds are draped with fine linens, embroidered with intricate patterns that tell stories of power and legacy. Silken sheets rustle softly as they move, whispering comfort in a language the prisoners below cannot hear. Above, gentle music fades into silence, leaving only the crackling of a dying fire and the distant hoot of an owl in the garden. Below, everything is different. The air clings heavy and damp to the cold stone walls, pressing in on the prisoners like a silent weight. There is no warmth here, only the chill that seeps deep into the bones. Straw on the floor is sodden and decayed, offering little relief from the unforgiving stone beneath. The prisoners lie close together, shivering, their bodies drawn tight against one another in a quiet attempt to share what little heat remains. Chains clink softly in the darkness. The only music here is the occasional scrape of iron or the faint scurry of rats moving unseen. Their small feet tap along the floor and walls, searching for scraps. Always present, always watching. The prisoners know these creatures intimately. They nibble at toes, gnaw at wounds, and scurry through the corners of the cell where the shadows seem deepest. The silence here is thick and absolute, punctuated only by muffled sobs or whispered prayers that float just beyond hearing. Sometimes a voice will rise, a cry of pain, fear, or desperation, only to be swallowed quickly by the overwhelming quiet that follows. It is a silence that stretches, endless and oppressive, folding over each prisoner like a shroud. Time itself seems to slow and lose meaning in this place. There is no sun to mark the hours, no clock to signal the passing days. The only measure is the slow drip of water from the ceiling, falling steadily onto the stone floor. Drip, drop, a quiet metronome counting out a sentence without end. Above, the world is peaceful and full of light. The scent of roasting meats, fresh flowers, and burning candles drifts gently through open windows. Noble voices dream of power and politics, love and betrayal. Their laughter and song reach down through thick stone floors and heavy wooden beams, a haunting reminder of a life lost to those below. The gulf between these two worlds is vast, one floor apart, one world of silk, wine and music, the other of stone, chains and fading breath, and no one walks between. The prisoners do not know if they will ever leave this place. They do not know if daylight will ever touch their skin again. The uncertainty gnaws at them more fiercely than hunger or cold. But still, they wait, bound by iron and forgotten by time, living in the shadow of a feast they will never taste. And beneath the flicker of candlelight, above the walls of stone, life goes on. As the candle burns low and the world around you grows still, take a moment to breathe. Let the stories of stone and shadow drift slowly from your mind. Imagine the soft flicker of flame against ancient walls, the slow drip of water marking time in places long forgotten. Think of those caught between two worlds, one of light and warmth, one of darkness and cold. Remember that history is not only made by kings and battles, it is made by every breath taken in silence, by every heartbeat echoing behind locked doors, by the quiet endurance of those who waited and were forgotten. Now, as your eyes grow heavy, carry this thought with you, that even in the darkest places, something fragile and human remains. A spark of hope, a thread of memory, a whisper in the stone. And when you drift off to sleep, know that these stories, these lives, are part of the endless river of time, flowing gently, slowly, ever onward.